Don't forget, we have intro music and before we can start talking, and then when we see ourselves.
That's when it works.
Oh no, they can hear everything that we're talking about right now.
All right, well,
but it's just been ongoing. It's like this running joke when we go live. It's like you're not supposed to talk during the intro music.
I mean, it's technology, man. I figured out the aquarium light, man. The YouTube live thing. Never get it.
Thanks, guys. Hey, how's it going?
All right, awesome, man. So, all right, today we're gonna answer a whole bunch of questions, man, from the hashtag Aspers TV. They're good ones today. We did some research on them today. Talked about it a bit.
Yeah, I went in there, found some of the most popular ones, some that were just cool and interesting to talk about. And there's 12,000 members in that group, so there's like 100 plus posts every day, new questions.
So, good news. I mean, totally new. I'm gonna change it up from my normal orange tea here to Zen.
Oh, that's good stuff.
Yeah, I think that maybe today will be more interesting because of it. I'll get my Zen on. We'll find out whether or not maybe I get smarter throughout the whole thing, and see what happens.
The temperature's getting too warm. I can't drink tea anymore. It's too hot.
Oh, you're off?
It's too hot.
All right. Iced tea, dude. Iced tea.
I agree.
All right, before we get into it, we're going to give away some stuff. That's what we do here. So,
two carts today.
2 carts.
Yeah, I didn't find any recent orders in the group that I was looking at, but 2 carts.
Well, for those of you who don't know, put some stuff in your cart, become a preferred reefer, or buy, and we'll just give away your order or your cart for free at the end. Down the footer of the website, go ahead.
Yeah.
And so you, Tomatia, so we have from where, though? And Costa Mesa, California. Costa Mesa must have a lot of reef tanks, man. I've said this one many times.
Really?
Now. Yeah. All right. Getting a Oscillator Universal 3155 Auto Top-Off. Bravo. That is $200. And a Saltwater Magnesium Test Kit. $219. Reward points going back to your account. Bravo. Oh, this is actually not even, it's going into your account so you can buy it, get it for free. So you can buy it,
yeah.
Awesome. And then we got another one here for Richard Birdie from New York. And it's an Aqua Gadget Custom Caddy Midsize Innovative Marine for $89. And a Comline DOC Skimmer 90004. Bravo, $141.
It's probably got like an Innovative Marine 40, Nuvo 40 or something, because those both fit in the back chambers of that.
I like this game where we guess what they're doing it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Great if that is what it is. And $231.15. Put it in his cart. Was probably contemplating whether or not, am I going to bite on it? Well, now there's no reason not to.
There you go.
Well, maybe even get a nicer one now.
Oh, you probably
could. Upgrade time. All right. Oh, we got two carts. That was it. All right. Awesome, man. Awesome.
Yeah, that was it. Well, I mean, that's $400 that you just gave away, so that's pretty cool.
And Bob's probably just stewing over there. I don't know. I just don't talk to him about all the stuff we give away.
Congrats, guys.
Yeah, don't ask. All right, awesome, man. So we're gonna answer some questions here. What was the first one?
We had a few of them. And some of them, like, we're talking 200 plus comments from the community answering these questions. Probably the first one that was the most heavily commented on was, how often do you do water changes? And I think we have. Let's pull up the how often do you
how often do you do water
overlay.
changes? All right, there it is.
Nope,
not that one.
How often? There we go. So Ben asked the group. I really like these questions where you just ask everybody, one, either like, hey, show off your sump, or two, like, hey, everybody, what's your thoughts on water changes, or how often? So obviously solicited almost 300 comments from Ben. And so
I wonder, 300 comments. That's crazy, man.
Yeah. I mean, his phone is blowing up with notifications.
I'm sure. We're at the battery, but.
Yeah, but getting a lot of good opinions and
stuff. All right, so we had our own opinions. I'll let you go first, man. Maybe cut back over. And what did your water change schedule? Man?
Yeah,
how often?
When I had the 40 breeder, I broke it down by not really percentage, although you could, but it was just like how many buckets I wanted to change that week. So the 40 breeder was like 2 buckets a week, 2 5-gallon buckets a week, so 10. So yeah, like over 10%, 15%. But on average, I shoot for 10, 15%, so like anywhere from 2 to 3 buckets, depending on my gallon size. Like my 93 cube, 3 buckets a week, just because it was easy to handle, and it's as many buckets as I had.
All right, stark contrast to that. 15 years ago I started, or something like that. Maybe it's longer now, I don't know. But I was always told do 20-30% water changes like once or twice a month.
Yeah.
And so I'd haul out that big old hose, and like bring it to the tank and start siphoning stuff into the sink and whatnot. And I always used the like Aqueon or what's the other one?
Python?
The Python.
Yeah.
It was a Python guy that I was using. And suck it into the sink and let it go down.
Well, did you mark like a level on your tank of how much to take out?
I don't know, like a third, whatever
All
it
right.
was.
Eyeball it.
But yeah, but the problem, man, was like it just took so long.
Yeah.
And so like you just didn't want to do it.
Gravity doesn't suck out very fast.
No, I mean you're into this for 2 hours, before like you get the stuff out, you got everything ready, and plus you made the salt yesterday. So, like now I think people are doing 10-15% weekly. And on that same tank, it would have been 2 buckets. And you know what?
Yeah.
I think I'd rather do 2 buckets every week than the hours of crap that I was doing once or twice a
Pull
month.
all the equipment out, get it all ready. Yeah.
So it was successful, though. It was a real successful method for me. And ultimately, it would stretch. And sometimes I'd even do 50% water changes,
Is that if you forgot or didn't have time?
Summer.
Yeah.
I'm out barbecuing and doing fun stuff. And winter in Minnesota sucks, especially if you're me. And I don't like skating, snowboarding. I don't like the snow. So I'm in the wrong state. So I love the summer, though. So in the summer, I go out and do stuff. And so probably skip a month, do 50%. Now, that's probably not the most ideal advice, but I never saw a negative outcome from that ever. The only time I went downhill finally was when I started this business, and all of a sudden, man, I was working 2 jobs and like an 80-hour work week from 7 o'clock in the morning. Drew and I would start the business, and then we'd end at the steakhouse at 11. So I don't even know how many hours that is, but it's too many. And then it started to not do water changes. And what actually was super cool is the Xenia, I think, kept my tank alive.
Filter.
I would grow Xenia like nobody's business, man. I'd cut it off on the side of the tank. It would fill up the whole sheet on the side of the 90-gallon tank, and I'd scrape it all off to the bottom, so there's only like maybe an inch left. And then by the next of like probably a month and a half, it would already have grown all the way to the top, the whole sheet. And then once the Xenia died from the outer top-off failure that some of you probably already know the story about, that's when the tank went south because I no longer have that nutrient export of all that Xenia and the biomass.
That makes sense. People are there's some people out there that use Xenia for like refugiums or in the sump.
You just stole it right out of my mouth.
Oh, yeah?
I want to do Xenia refugium so bad right now.
You want to compare the two?
Well, I was thinking about really cool because I'm thinking about this tank that's going to go up in my house, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking like clam refugium.
Tyler's a big proponent for that.
Look down like clam. I was even thinking you could make one of those cool like zero edge tanks that looks like it's a display in your house somewhere, but it's actually your refugium.
That's cool.
Just look down clams. So
that's pretty cool.
I don't know, but also Xenia refugium.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how efficient they are at reduction.
I wouldn't say it was super efficient for me. It was also a fertilizer for my yard because I could never get rid of that much.
If a Cato refugium can work too well, which we know it probably can, I wonder if a Xenia filter could work just even keel. I don't know if you could. If it would work too well.
Nutrient faster than the other corals in there.
I don't know.
Like maybe I don't know. Who knows?
That's worth testing.
I don't know. It's way cooler than a ball of Catomorpha. I can tell you that for sure.
Well, you want to show it off.
All right. So all of that, I know a lot of people just do water changes when it looks like it needs it.
Yeah.
I will tell you that looks like it needs it means the animals you care for look sick. I mean, like
true.
Literally, their tissue is showing you signs of bad news. Like something about it is not going well. That is probably too far. So I understand you should do them then. I just wouldn't rely on it in that fashion because if you're like caring for a puppy and the only way that the puppy is sick is when its tissue is telling you went too far, man.
That's true.
You definitely went too far. So probably not when it looks like it needs it. I know people do that, but and you can probably do that for a while. But
I mean, a lot of people say, like, even for this tank, I have my canary coral in the tank where I'm like, all right, I watched that one, and if it starts to go south, I know it's something I need to take action in the tank.
So go south, though, is a really nice way of saying, like, when it's dying, that's when we should try to save it. How do we try to save it before that?
True.
But you're right. That one coral in there absolutely does that. I don't know if people do it when they do ICP. So ICP tells you to do water change. I don't think there's any problem with that. If it says in the ICP report that your water is good, it probably is, and I'd probably leave it alone. But if it tells you to do a water change, it's telling you it's bad, and you should probably do the water change.
Yeah.
And people definitely do that. Right now, though, what do you do with auto or water changes?
I don't. Well, I don't do water changes by hand. I do them with an auto water change system, so I don't have to carry buckets. And the most I have to do effort-wise is make up and now that we know how long, like, some of the parameters of saltwater can keep, I can make up a large storage bin. Like if I was in my basement and I had this knowledge and I had an auto water change dosing system or a dose or something, I'd probably still have my tank up in my house because I know I can go make 60 gallons of water, turn it on auto water change, whether it's continuous or like push button. Continuous would probably be my way to go. And then the only time I have to touch it is when I need to go make more water.
So all you guys have heard that auto water change pitch 1,000 times. Won't bore you with it again.
Good.
But it really is the ultimate stabilizer for me, and also ultimate will allow me to have a tank. The tank goes in my house. I'm gonna go as far as to say there's no chance I'd put a big tank in there unless I could auto water change it. At least if minimum, if it wasn't with like a dose or something, there would be like valves going to a drain where I could just empty it and fill it because. I am not hauling around buckets anymore.
No.
Eventually, you kind of graduate past it, and you realize the risk of it. And the risk is not that the bucket's going to fail; it's you're going to fail the bucket. Like eventually, you're going to get tired of carrying buckets around, and you'll stop doing them, which puts the tank and the animals that rely on you at risk. So it's not the bucket or the work; it's just a risk that after 5 years, they're going to get tired of doing the buckets.
Yeah.
You know, so
sort of the natural progression in the hobby. I think everybody follows that. I'm going to do water changes every week and gung-ho, and then some people actually stick with it. There's reefers that I know that years and years later, it's sort of like their calm, their time to themselves with their reef tank on the weekend where I'm going to do the water changes, I'm going to do this maintenance and stuff like that. Really calming stuff for them. For me, I'm just busy. So
I agree. I will say, though, if you do the water change in the beginning yourself manually, it's going to help you get in tune with the rhythm of the tank and what happens when you do and don't do them. So setting them up auto from the beginning would be super cool, but also you get you lose a chance of a learning opportunity of what happens when you do and don't do them and what your actions do to help protect the animals' lives in the tank. So I mean,
there's probably some cost associated with that too, where if I'm starting like I'm starting first into the RC plane hobby, I'm personally not going to go out and buy the several $1,000 plane right off the bat. I'm going to go to the Hobby Lobby and probably pick one up for like $50 and get my feet wet.
Cheapest remote possible.
Yeah. And then work my way up if I get addicted to it.
Well, you know what it is success breeds success. So like if I crash my plane day one, I may never get another plane.
But I only spent $50 on it.
If I do loop-de-loops with it the first day and somehow land it,
Yeah.
I will probably crash it tomorrow, but I'll buy a new one because that was such a cool experience the first time. So yeah, absolutely. Like we invest. Success allows us to like do new, cool, fun things and invest and make lives easier. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Redfield ratio. I mean, like I just can see everybody like, what? They're going to talk about Redfield ratio, but yet, you know what? We're going to do it. And so where is it?
Okay, I just got it pulled over here. So Ben was asking the question. He's heard about Redfield ratio, and I think we've all kind of like bounced it or heard it on the forums or around in the hobby. And he just wants to make sense. He's trying to make sense of the Redfield ratio, what it is, and what's the so-called perfect numbers to aim for if you're following this Redfield ratio.
All right, so here's the deal. It's garbage, man. I mean, like it's not garbage, but it's also total garbage.
Yeah.
It is the ratio of organic carbon to nitrogen to phosphorus in the ocean.
So 160 to 16 to 1.
Yep. So what is it? 160.
160 organic carbon, 16 nitrate, and
to one ratio phosphorus.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, that is absolutely correct, and those organisms absolutely, evolved over a millennia to live in an environment like that. And if you could do it in your tank, I would say you are amongst the best reefers out there, and you should have tremendous pride in yourself. And if you want to shoot for it, go ahead. But the problem is the ratio does not scale. So like you may think it scales, you may not. There is no what I would call real evidence to say that it scales, meaning that there's almost no nitrogen and phosphorus in the ocean, and so like the 0.001 phosphorus scale to nitrate is like not something that you can really maintain in your tank very well. It's just impossible to ride the edge of zero.
Right.
And so the scale of 16:1 would mean like if I had 16 nitrogen, would I have 1 part per million phosphorus in the tank and then expect the same results in my tank as in the ocean? No. And the total flyer is nobody knows how much organics is a part of the equation. So like it's just totally made up.
Yeah. Well, it's starting to get really mad scientisty if you're trying to play that game. And I mean, when you look at other people's tanks over the decades that the hobby's been going, and nobody's really attacked Redfield Ratio up until, I mean, maybe ever. I don't know if anybody's actively trying to.
I'd say a lot of people like bring it up as a potential evolution of the conversation, and it is that.
Right.
But it's kind of like misused and really anecdotally. And so all the scientists of the reefing hobby just berate the poor person that brings it up, which is equally unhelpful, by the way, is, hey, man, let's challenge each other in a friendly manner to help evolve the conversation and see what really does apply here. There's a couple of things that just, for me, like throw a big kink in it. A, you don't know how much organic carbon's in the tank. And now with the Triton DOC testing, it's possible we could figure out what the organic carbon content is.
But how do you adjust it?
Yeah, how do you adjust it? We can adjust it probably water changes. I think they actually have some stuff you can dose it to.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about carbon dosing that everybody has been doing, or not everybody, but a lot of people have been doing over the years. And you didn't do enough when you still have a lot of nitrogen or nitrate and phosphate in the tank. If you did too much, how would you know?
I don't know. You're zero. We know zero's not good.
Yeah, you could be overdosing, and the problem is that almost everybody probably is overdosing because you probably set the thing up, the dose, to get the levels down.
Yeah.
And whatever the low dose is to get it down is totally different than it is to maintain it at that level, right? Which is probably a fraction of it. So I could be dumping in. I mean, I could have 8 million to 16:1 carbon to phosphorus to nitrogen, and who knows what that would do? Like we really don't know, and like so it's definitely a problem. The second piece of this now is that the new evolutionist conversation is dinos and cyano and diatoms are all caused by an imbalance of nitrogen to phosphorus. Some of the conversation is because it's not in balance to the Redfield ratio. Some of it, the conversation is just because it's too low or too high or whatever. But now it's shifted away from, it was definitely because it was too high, and now it's too low. And
now it's an imbalance.
It's really easy to jump on that thing, but it certainly isn't solving everybody's problem to go dose some nitrate and watch all the problems go away. So it's probably not as simple as that. It could be the ratio of carbon in there as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the DOC testing from Triton. It's super nerdy, but it's almost more nerdy than I'm willing to nerd out on.
We sent in a few samples of it to see what the results are coming back, which we
did.
should have this week. So
it will be interesting to see. In relation to carbon dosing too, I talked to you about earlier about the WWC guys and their thoughts on carbon dosing.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, they have a pretty good thought process to it. To where, what was it, the entire crew of WWC, with however many employees, are diehard nerdy reefers. They love reefing. They love every aspect of reefing. They're just into the hobby, into the forums, into the groups, talking geek and geeking out on this and that. And they said that carbon dosing is too geeky for them even.
Yep. I mean, if you take a group like WWC's nerds, and which are nerds cubed, I say that in the most friendly possible manner. I would actually love to be able to group myself with them. But Nerds Cubed, and even if Nerds Cubed isn't able to doesn't want that level of nerd, it's time to move on. Definitely. It is such an unknown factor of what you're happening when you're dosing all that carbon into the tank.
So then what do we aim for then? If we know zero's not good, And we know that super high of nitrate and phosphate is not good. Is there like a range, a ratio? Is there any type of something that we could aim for?
So I'd love to know if the scientists out there are going to berate me for this, or if everybody else will say, "Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense." I don't know. So like in the comments, I'd love to hear. Berate me all you want. I would say that it's probably reasonable to say let's follow the ratio to a degree. Like not have super strong expectations, but the further you get away from the nutrient ratio in the ocean, like nutrients being phosphorus, nitrogen, and organic carbon, the more wildly messed up that is, the more wildly messed up it's going to be in your tank. And definitely in the ocean, there have been indications that any one of those things that are elevated can cause blooms of undesirable organisms like in controlled areas. So like having deviated drastically from that ratio is probably bad. So hey, if you've got a tank and you want to try to find that ratio, go ahead. And for what's worth, it isn't 16 to 1. It is...
Yeah, that's nitrogen to phosphorus, but we're talking in terms of nitrates to phosphates, which we all pretty much test for and understand. That's
it's
the
10.5 to 1.
10.5 to 1.
So 10.5 to 1. So you know what? Don't go mad scientist on this, but if you want to use this ratio to some degree, try to hit 10 to 1 nitrate to phosphate, and explore it and share your results with people. And the further you get away from that ratio, share those results too. But in that environment, that means that if I had 1 nitrate, I'd have roughly 0.01
to 0.19.
Yeah, so somewhere right in there. I'll just take the 10x instead of 10.5 because you're not going to get that close anyway.
Yeah.
But if I had 0.03 nitrate, that would be our 0.1 phosphate. I'd have 1 nitrate in the tank. And so on. So there's a ratio that you could follow. It's probably a little closer to something that's realistic. And you know what? If you fall way out of that, it's 20 to 1. You're probably doing way, 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 way better than anybody else. So I don't know about the Redfield ratio. So I'm going to give you one little piece because you pulled up that slide, what the Redfield ratio is, and it's that little fish guy down there. So the Redfield ratio is, roughly speaking, is just the organic content or the nutrient content of the ocean. And it's because plankton is 16 to 1. It's because the shrimp that eat the plankton are 16 to 1. It's because the fish that eat the shrimp are 16 to 1. And then the sharks that eat the fish are roughly 16 to 1. And then when the whale dies, it breaks down into 16 to 1. And that is all not actually 100% true. Some of them will vary from 16 to 1. You can go back. They'll vary from 16 to 1, but the overall equation of all that stuff dying, living, pooping in the ocean produces a 16 to 1 in most of the ocean, or a vast majority of the places that they have collected samples from pretty consistently. And there's some scientists that say it varies a little bit differently. They have a little slightly different ratio, but that's the most commonly referred to one.
Well, I mean, so for people looking for, like, listening to it and like looking for a number, like, what should I target my nitrates? What should I target my phosphates for? I think you give some pretty good examples in like the BRS WWC for where WWC aims for, and there's also, but in those, what we aim for, what WWC aims for, and in those there's it's not like, hey, if I'm aiming for 10 parts per million or between 6 to 10 parts per million nitrate, it's in between some number and some number. It's not, I am dying trying to stay and maintain at 10 parts per million nitrate or 6 parts per million nitrate. That's where people start getting into dosing this and then backing up the dosing and increasing the dosing, and how does that relate to your food input and nutrition input, and then how does that relate to controlling your export? Like, do I start dialing in my Cato and my refugium to export less because now this is off? I mean, that starts to turn into a
mad
headache,
scientists will produce negative results
and headaches.
End of story.
For you and the tank.
For sure. All right, we nerded out enough. It's time to move on to the next conversation, man. Now,
see if there's
carbon dosing, Redfield. Oh, is there questions in here?
There's a couple questions.
All right, let's answer a couple.
The new ICP test for organics, how close will that get you to the ratio?
I don't know. We are going to get the results on this thing pretty soon. I don't have any idea what's going to come out of the DOC. If you look at their website or the product, I have no idea what it's going to do.
Yeah, what the chart
I think
says.
we're 2 days away from maybe some results. We got the Germany received it email, so should be a matter of days.
Yeah.
It says that it tells you all the different types of nitrogen. I don't know if that means nitrate and nitrite and ammonia. Maybe it's telling you that even the organics in the form of amino acid or broken down food or whatnot. I don't really know.
Yeah.
So it'll be super interesting to see what it reports out.
Yeah, I'll probably end up posting the screenshots of some of the reports and just see what it is.
I gotta be honest, man. I'd be surprised if that many people know who hasn't done it already. If you've done it already, you probably know.
Oh, yeah.
If you haven't done it already, the product description, the website. Man, I've talked to these guys in person at 2 different shows about it, and I still went over my head. What are you actually displaying? Well, all the forms of nitrogen. Okay, well, nitrate, the conversation just gets mucky every time. So, I'm going to be really curious to be able to dissect what we get in the report and how I'd apply it to a reef tank, and then maybe suggest how we display that on the website a little bit better, so average person can understand what the hell it is they're buying.
Right, sure.
All right. Give me another question here.
Let's see. There is.
How long can saltwater be stored if there's a power head circulating? Well, that's interesting. Totally different than what we're talking about today.
No, that was in reference to, I think, the water change. That one popped up in our last topic.
So the answer is you're going to, not just water circulation, but we heat it.
See, my prediction is, so we just did the how long can water be stored without circulation, without heating, just pretty much just mix it up and then stagnant. And I mean, there was some varying lengths and degrees. Well, there's some varying degrees of how the alkalinity and calcium changes over storage. For the most part, a lot of what we tested was it may or not. It may vary so little that you just store it indefinitely. You store it for quite a while until you're ready to use it without circulation and heating. So I'm actually going to start to set up the next version of this today, so we can get it off the ground tomorrow, where we circulate and heat. I imagine the introduction of heat is going to be a major variable in how long it's going to maintain the parameters.
I was dead wrong in the last one. So I honestly thought when you stored even not mixed and not heated, I fully expected all of them to lose at least a DKH over the 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen.
No.
Right. In this case, I also expect terrible results from heating it and mixing it. Mixing is going to promote all kinds of chemical reactions and promote them to happen faster. Heating it is definitely going to reduce the solubility of the calcium and alkalinity and cause it to precipitate out faster, or at least all the chemistry I've ever learned is going to says that.
That's what we think.
Yeah, so I expect terrible results. But I guess we're going to find out. We didn't have one planned on just mixing, though. Maybe we'll have to circle back around to just that one. And I guess I don't see a good reason not to do that one after this.
Yeah, for sure. Because there's some people that have no need to heat their water because they live in that type of climate, or they might be doing it like we do for some of these auto water changes, is where you're doing such a low percentage every day of continuous water change, the temperature of your storage water doesn't matter. Yeah,
I think the only real argument I'd say for mixing it, perpetually, would be maybe to keep gas exchange going and keep oxygen levels up or something. But if you're going to do a 10% water change, I don't think it's going to really matter. And if I did a 50% water change and it was severely oxygen depleted somehow, maybe some bacteria built up in there and depleted the oxygen, that would probably matter then, but only then.
So you also mentioned when we were talking about the results of it that maybe in a stagnant tank, depending on how much volume there is, maybe there are pockets of disproportionate homogenized mixtures of the solution where this pocket here might have a higher alk and this pocket here might have lower calcium.
Well, definitely stabilized over time, but that was one of the things when we were testing the alkalinity and calcium, we saw them kind of go up and down more than you thought, and partially could just be the inconsistencies of the test kit.
Yeah.
But it also could be just as things are dissolving, like the top may be just a little bit different than the bottom or whatnot, and it will eventually probably mix up. But we were pulling samples from the center.
Right in the center, yep.
But yeah, it's definitely possible. So maybe we'll do that one, man. And after we do the heated and mixed version. All right. Let's see, what else have we got here?
Using GFLO, could this mess up the ratio and therefore cause... We're back to the ratio.
There it is, ratio. Can you pick that one out and so we can see the end of it? Second one from the bottom. So, tune in a bit late. Does this mean using GFO alone would mess up the ratio and cause an imbalance in my tank? So that is definitely part of the conversation that's going on.
Yeah.
And so, GFO doesn't have to be used 24/7, right? And it definitely could reduce the available nitrogen or phosphorus and phosphate to an undesirable level.
But it's also one of those is like how much. So say you had elevated levels of phosphates in your tanks. How much GFO and for how long and how much do you use and what type do you use and which way to only bring it down by this much rather than all the way to zero?
Pretty hard.
You can't do that really. It's not that measurable.
I think that's why the guys over at Worldwide use the lanthanum chloride or phosphate.
Because it's
or
measurable?
whatever it is from Brightwell.
Yeah.
Because I can actually go do the math on it. It just precipitates the stuff out. So I can dose, X amount of milliliters in this volume size tank, and it will reduce, phosphate by this much.
Yeah.
So GFO is a little bit more of a hammer. The one part, as we this conversation bounces back and forth. Like I want less phosphate in my tank, and then I want more phosphate, and blah. You just go back and forth. So think stages of the tank, right? So in the beginning, lower phosphate means lower algae. Lower algae means more success, right? Like the biggest reason that you're going to tear that tank down inside of a year is because it's full of algae and somebody else in your household says, get that ugly thing out of my house, right? You may even say it to yourself. So in the beginning, ultra low phosphate and preventing like algae outbreaks and whatnot is probably, the key to success. Later on, the thing is full of tons and tons of coral. The success of those corals may be maintaining some level of phosphorus in the tank. And so one of the things you can do is make sure that you're adding a source of phosphorus in the tank in the form of prey. So prey could be amino acids, it could be food, it could be additional fish for fish poop and whatnot. In fact, we added a few tangs to this tank. One of them was pretty big, and we called him the pooper for a reason. I just wanted additional poopers in the tank. I want more nutrients in the tank in that form because we have a hard time maintaining it. There's so much coral uptake of nitrogen and phosphorus. No matter how much food we put in, it just dissipates. So, so GFO could. I'll say GFO is probably the most widely used phosphorus or phosphate reducing media. Super, super effective. So effective that I think a lot of tanks could probably have a misleading idea of how they're running their tank because there's no algae and everything looks pretty awesome. And then one day, man, they let the GFO go too long and they find out their nitrates are actually 300. Boom, algae. So it's a cool tool. Doesn't work for every last thing, and there is an inverse to using it too much. All right, hey, let's move on to other questions.
For sure.
The crazy stuff. So there was
click
one
on the one called bare minimum.
Bare minimum.
Yep.
That was it.
Yeah. So David was was asking us asking the group over on hashtag AskBRSTV. Almost 200 comments on this one. What's the bare minimum equipment he would need to start up a saltwater tank? So automatically to me that sounds like this is your first foray into saltwater, and it's kind of back to our radio controlled remote controlled plane conversation where if I'm going to get into that hobby, which one do I get? How much do I need to spend? And what's the bare minimum I can get away with and enjoy flying the plane, but not spend thousands of dollars right off the bat? And then that's where maybe that's where I feel this question comes from. And for a lot of us, I'd probably say that the starter tank for a lot of reefers who are just getting out is that 40 breeder.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so
So definitely, though, I mean, this is kind of a budgetary thing, and it isn't budgetary in the essence of like how much money you make in this universe.
Oh, no.
It's how much you're willing to spend on it,
Yeah.
right? And it's just
see
going to
if you
vary
like it.
totally different from one person to another. But this is one of the things I learned about reefers. Is you could never convince somebody to like decide they want a aquarium or saltwater aquarium. Like you have to be the type of nerd that says, you know what, the harder it is, the more I want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like the bigger
Yeah.
the challenge is, the more excited I am to do this thing. And so because of that, you're probably willing to invest in it more than the average person would be. Like if I told you you're going to spend $2,000 in a tank, you'd be like, what, are you insane?
Yeah.
Whatever. And I'm like, dude, you spent $2,000 in the tires in your car. Yeah, but they look nice. Like, well, your priorities are totally different than mine.
Yeah.
Man. Like,
Yeah.
I had somebody actually over the weekend say to me that they thought that the Ecotech Radions were overpriced, and like because of that, they would never recommend them, and it's like a shilly or something, right? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but like in the same frame of mind, I think that like a Lexus is an overpriced version of a Toyota, and I'd never recommend that to anybody because you're paying like twice as much, dude, for some plush.
Yeah.
You know, like most of the cars, the exact same thing. It's like, what color, fabric did you staple to it?
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's more than that. But like how you justify these things is totally different to everybody. So for some people, a brand new tank could be, $500. It's probably about as cheap as you're reasonably going to do a normal sized tank. And
Yeah, I mean, with everything that you need to actually have something living in a glass box,
Yep.
like I'm into it for about $500.
Me, I'm nerdy enough. When I started this, I was just a waiter, and so like I wasn't like rich by any imagination, but I went there with $2,000.
Yeah.
I just kind of assumed that this is what this is going to cost. I wanted a 90-gallon tank, and like I was probably even light a little bit on that one. The way I was going to go about it. But that's the budget that I had for it. But I think most people are probably going to start closer to that $500. Inside of that, let's think about a $500 tank. What does it look like?
You got to think of like what does it take to keep this stuff alive, and one is, I mean, equipment wise, of course you're going to need salt, of course you're going to need water. And,
Bucket of salt, $60.
Yeah, water, whatever that takes. Probably at that point when I first started, I went and got RO only water from like the grocery store and the thing, because I didn't know where to get water or how to make my own.
I bought a Kent Marine RO system day one.
Yeah.
You need one.
Down the path of good water. But yeah, so, I mean, what do you need to keep this stuff alive? Well, they like flow. I mean, they need to, for metabolic function and things like that, they need to have movement in the water, like ocean currents. Some would debate, you said heaters, and I don't know, some would debate heaters. It depends on where you live, I guess, or how temperature controlled your ambient room is, but
I'd use a heater. It's too cheap, man. Like, I mean, you could argue that if your room is perfect, blah, blah, blah. No, but, like, there's just too many reasons why the temperature in my room goes up or down, or specifically down.
Yeah.
Somebody turns it up, whatever, air conditioning, it's cold outside, whatever. So, I just don't think an unstable tank that's not controlled at all, a bad move, and especially it's like, $35.
yeah, for sure.
So,
So flow, so you need some sort of flow, power heads, what have you.
I'd probably go Corellias in this case because I think they're the cheapest probably option out there.
They push a lot of water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's anything cheaper out there. It doesn't need to be DC and whatever, and they're just really easy to use.
Put some flow in it, yeah.
Yep.
We're also talking about like probably one of the main components, just light. Like for corals, I mean, if you're doing a fish only, you're still going to light this stuff. You're going to light these tanks either way. You want to see your fish, you want to see your corals, and you need light. Corals need light to grow.
So we were talking about what's the cheapest way, and so I would say that LEDs are like the hot thing, right? Like by hot thing, like the only thing. Like especially as you're a new person, who wants to go buy a aging technology? Like when's the last time you go to Home Depot and bought fluorescent lights for your house? It's all LED stuff, right?
Yeah, true.
Even the LED tubes now, or fluorescent tubes can have LED options, right? So, but that isn't necessarily true for aquariums. LEDs pose different problems, especially the cheap ones. So you can definitely go on like Amazon or eBay or whatever, and they call them black boxes, and they will absolutely work. They just plug in. The difference though is you don't really know how they work, right? So a lot of them are pretty strong and they may overpower the light. We're testing like 1,000 par out of some of these things, so you definitely got to tune them back, but it's not really easy. So for the average new reefer, you can definitely have success with the black boxes, and especially if you know how to use them properly. But for the new reefer, those things don't actually go together super well. So if you need LEDs, go ahead. Go ahead. That's probably your cheapest option to pick something up like that. However, what we were talking about today was, I think, even a better option.
Yeah. I mean, one thing. Well, like you said, with LEDs, there's so many. For me, there's so many variables in there that you could get it wrong. Like you could
somebody's done this for years.
Easy.
Gets it wrong all the time.
We're talking intensity, maybe color spectrum to some degree, but intensity is probably the number one reason why LEDs tend to.
Power isn't horsepower. More is not better.
Yeah.
In fact, less is way better in almost every case.
But one thing I've always, since I started the hobby, one thing I've always it's been easy and it's plug and play. And I plug this thing into the timer into a wall, and I'd say I want it to run 12 hours, and that's all the thought I need to put into this thing. T5s.
Yeah.
Like I get all of the best worlds. I get a nice diffuse light that LEDs you'd either have to space strategically in your tank to get even diffusion across the thing. Add diffusers in some cases. Also, like this all-encompassing type of. I mean, for the price, you can cover a 36-inch tank where you might need 2 LEDs at a higher cost to cover that same size tank. I can get a 36-inch T5 fixture for half or three times less the cost, and my whole tank's covered, and it's plug and play. Plug it in, success. And so there's a couple options in that department. I was saying like I think the Sunblaze T5s that we carry, like they're utility lights, they're grow lights.
$30?
Yeah, $130, $140 for about a 36-inch. 36 because we're talking like the 40 breeder size. Those T5s work really well. But then you are limited to this is what a lot of people say in the hobby is like, buy once, don't buy twice, because you're always respending and respending. Sure,
no matter
it's
what.
true. It's going to happen regardless.
You can't avoid it, man.
But there is an option that you have the path to upgrade, which is start with T5s with one of those like aquatic life fixtures or one of those. Giesman just came out with their stellar version too. But yeah, you can get T5s, have plug and play success, and then as you explore more or want more power or more LEDs or more coverage or whatever, you can add LEDs into it as you see fit and grow with your light.
I'm going to tell you right now, after our discussion, that is now officially my go-to answer to lighting an inexpensive tank is that aquatic life T5, because you can keep most corals and stuff under that, like all of the LPS and softies and polyps and stuff. All is not the right word. Most and like have success with your brand new tank.
With just the T5s.
Just the T5s. You're into it for like $230.
Yep.
And then when time sees fit and I want to upgrade and I want to buy like some more advanced corals that require more light, like some SPS corals, I can go plug in my favorite LED into the top, like literally almost any LED out there that's in a module form. Plug in the top. I now have my T5 hybrid, which is really considered to be one of the best options in reefing, because you get that blanket coatage of light that comes from the T5s that is low contrast and hits all the shadowed areas, and then you create this high contrast light from the single point of light in the LED, which creates the shimmer in the tank, makes it visually appealing, and then creates some darker and lighter areas, but all of them within the area the corals probably grow in. So, to me, that's the best path for a brand new tank. You want to, bare minimum to start a saltwater tank, because you can walk up into, the range that almost everybody's in. In fact, there's so many really, really advanced, super successful reefers out there using that exact method of what they started out with, which is the aquatic life hybrid with their favorite LED, or the LEDs they already owned. And they probably started with LEDs and they found out it was a little challenging to get what they wanted. And they could put in a million LED modules to try to solve this, or they can just backfill the light with some cheap T5s, and
Problem solved.
you know, instead of buying $3,000 in lights, you can get it done for a third of that.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
So, or even maybe less. So, yeah, I would definitely say that. So we got a 40. If you want to get into this super cheap,
Yeah, bare minimum.
40 breeder, aquatic life, 36-inch fixture,
Yep.
maybe the little $25 bracket that makes it narrows it up a little bit. Some Hydro Corellia power heads, probably the bigger ones, and a heater. Rock.
Mechanical.
You don't even need salt or sand. I mean, rather.
Yeah.
you do need
You do
salt.
need salt.
Bucket of salt.
Yeah.
So like, you don't need a skimmer. You don't need a chemical reactor. You don't need an overflow. You don't need a sump. You don't need any of this stuff. All of that stuff will make it easier and better.
True.
But like, almost all that stuff can be almost all the filtration stuff anyway can be completely removed with your willingness to take buckets of water out with a water change and replace it with new.
Yeah.
And when you're get tired of that, go buy a $300 skimmer, right? And
Add
it'll
a
save
sump.
some quality of life for you maybe or whatnot. But like, add a sump. And the sump is nice because you can get all the cords out of the tank.
Yeah.
The heater's not dangling in there anymore. You're getting some increased evaporation. I could put better equipment in there. Or I should say gas exchange, better gas exchange. You can get better equipment down in there, and it just gives you a place to put all the equipment that's not in the tank or hanging on the back of the tank. But you can walk your way there, and we definitely did that with the 40-gallon breeder. By the way, we say 40-gallon breeder just because it's the right dimensions for a reef tank, but also because you can get them for $40 at Petco.
Yeah.
Really frequently.
Yeah. I mean, we've got 3 of them over here. We've got 40 breeders all over, and I would almost venture to say that all the reefers here at BRS had a 40 breeder sometime in their lives. Like,
Yeah, for
I've
sure.
had one for sure.
The
Yeah,
first
multiple.
series that we did on how to build a saltwater aquarium was based on a 40-gallon breeder, and we did eventually upgrade it and put no, it was all hang-on gear to begin with.
Yeah.
So we did upgrade it, and that one was kind of fun because, you know, it was just me and Reed in the basement, and we're just trying to take the actual progression of average reefer would take as you like upgrade all this stuff. And we had a hang-on fuge, and we had a hang-on skimmer, then eventually drilled it. And that was terrible. We were in the air path, flight
remember.
path. I was trying to drill this stupid thing, and like every 30 seconds we had to stop because there was an airplane. But yeah, it was that was a pretty interesting series, man. So I think that's what we do. All right.
Just some bare minimum
All
stuff.
right,
to
I got
get in.
13 minutes left, man. I got a hard stop today at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
So, which one are we gonna cover here, man? Let's do the crazy stuff.
Yeah,
one.
let's talk about let's talk about
All right.
reefing. So let's see, weird behaviors. There you go.
Oh, is there any questions here, man? Before we get too far into it.
I'll jump back to us.
Yeah,
there.
go jump back, man. All right. Does Dino X work? All right, it's third from the top there. Or not third, in the top third.
I mean, I've heard mixed stories about this. That it worked for me, and no, this stuff is snake oil. It doesn't work, and I don't know. I'm kind of like on the fence of both of them. There's different strains of dinoflagellates out there. So, and from what I've read, they all most of them react differently to different treatment methods. So, you know, there is a possibility that Dino X works for some. For maybe it hasn't been identified what strain, or maybe there was some additional, you know, circumstances that led to, hey, I dosed Dino X, but I did this and I did this and I also did this, and there's stuff that they're discounting that might be in that equation too, that could lead to it. Or maybe it works on some strains. It's tough to say.
It definitely works sometimes.
Yeah.
Right. So like, not all the time. That would be the knee jerk. I even talked to the owner there, Claude, and he told me that it is a last resort because sometimes it takes the whole tank south, man. You know, so this is not the first thing that you would go to, and even if the owner owns up to that, like, I mean, I don't think he just acknowledged it privately. I think that's like kind of public information, man. That like, this is a last resort. This is a, you know, you're one step from shutting this tank down because you can't beat this thing. Let's take this route instead. And so I don't know really what's in there that what is potentially going to kill them or prevent them from replicating or whatever it is that it does, but definitely works sometimes. And, you know, one of the questions that we get all the time, man, is could you do a video on
I was just gonna
dinos,
say,
right?
yeah. I was like, what would it take for us to do a video on dinos?
Well, so this is the thing that I don't want to do. I don't want to do a video that just, you know, regurgitates like all the same information. It's all super anecdotal and like do this, do that, whatever. Like you can go find black out your tank, raise your phosphate levels or whatever. Like 15 different things you could find anywhere. Turn your flow up, man. Like I don't want to regurgitate that stuff. Go do all that stuff if you want. But I want to find real answers. So definitely get the microscope, man. You can get a cheap microscope on eBay or Amazon for almost nothing, and start like exploring what kind of organism this is and what starts working on it. So this is prime habitat for BRS-TV Investigates.
Yeah.
We'll probably have to request at some point, send us your dinos.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking. My answer to when people ask that is, can you do a video? Can you do a video? It's like, yeah. In order for us to do a video, it'd have to be in BRS TV Investigates or some kind of fashion where we're not just, like you said, regurgitating everything. We're actually diving into solutions that work in ways that nobody really is doing. So when that fits into the schedule of what we're currently doing, maybe.
That's the way I want to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't want to just give you a list of everything. You could go find that anywhere. Top 10 dino tricks. Maybe we'll do that. I don't know. That sounded good, didn't it?
Yeah, it actually did.
But yeah, I don't know, man. I want to really find out. So I think it's a problem that is solvable one way or another. I know it's solvable. One of the things I'll say is some of that stuff is solvable is just leave the damn tank alone. Let these things play themselves out. Now, if it's killing all your corals that are in there already, so be it, man. You got to do something about it.
Yeah.
But if the tank is just filled with live rock and it's in the ugly stage, just let it ride it out, man. It might take a month or two or whatever, but stop even blowing it off, man. Just let these organisms fight out the battle that's happening in your tank and leave it alone, and it'll probably go away on its own. You may be just messing it up, spreading it around the tank as you constantly try to blow it off.
Right. I mean, if there's nothing in the tank, then there's really, and this is happening. What's preventing me from just shutting off my lights and doing the blackout anyway? If I'm not trying to keep something alive with my lights on, then just shut them off.
Yeah, dude. Absolutely.
Maybe that'll help.
Yeah. All right, man. All right. Let's answer a couple more questions. You know what? I mean, I just don't think we're going to get to the crazy stuff. So let's just answer the next 9 minutes. We'll answer some questions in here.
Okay. Have you ever done a water change? I like Nodak Reef's question at the very top. You ever done a water change by pulling out through your skimmer? And I started doing that and feel like I can't. Can you show us some more there?
I feel like it keeps up the water much more clear.
So over skimming to pull water out for a water change. I wonder how long that takes.
Huh. I mean, it would probably work. I mean, you're probably doing super wet skimming, and because of that, you're definitely pulling out more. It's less precise, so you gotta now
monitor the cup.
And your auto top off.
Yeah, you shut your auto top off. Crank the skimmer up so that it's overflowing the cup, and you've got that going down into a bucket.
That. All right, I got what you're saying.
So now I've got the skimmer waste cup line going into a 5-gallon bucket, and when it fills up the 5-gallon bucket, then I can add in some new fresh salt water, and I've done a water change.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and say that is probably the most effective way to export water for a water change that's going to have the highest concentration of nutrients that I've heard to date. So bravo, Nodak. Are you willing to go through that level of effort to increase the efficiency of your skimmer? Or your water change?
The amount of time that I can imagine a skimmer pulling water out to fill up a 5-gallon bucket, if you don't have it though. Well, if you have it cranked, why not just empty the tank itself? I mean, if it's going to pull that water that fast, pulling water that fast from the top of the tank is about the same.
No, I don't think so. So what it's going to do here is
there's that air water mixture.
This is just nerdy enough for me. I like it. Okay, so what you're going to do then is the thing's probably putting in X amount of water or gallons an hour
of
right?
air,
or air and water, right? And so the water that's going to come out the top that's bubbled out is going to have a higher concentration of organics in it than if I just pulled water out of the tank, due to the nature that it bubbled out over the top as a form of a bubble.
Your circulation, your turnover rate has something to do with that too, because if you have a slow 2 times turnover rate and you're pulling that, sure, it's nutrient rich, but in what percentage is that to the display tank?
It's going to take hours though, man. It's going to
pull
fill
5 gallons out?
Pull out. to pull out like a 10% water change, 100
So we're
gallons, I meant to
assuming-
pull out 10%.
We're assuming different speeds of how fast this is happening from your skimmer. Like I'm assuming, like I want to do a 5-gallon water change on my tank. I kind of wanted to do it within an hour. And
Okay, but even at 100 gallons an hour, like the standard pump that's on one of those things, like you're now going to mix the air in it, which means it's a tiny fraction of that thing. It's definitely going to take a half hour at least to fill up 2 buckets.
oh yeah,
But hey, if you do it, man, I actually think it would probably, done right, would probably pull out more the concentration of nutrients, undesirable nutrients or organics in the water would probably be higher in the skimmate that's overflowing
than just
sucking water out of there. So if you want the most efficient water change, that said, I think you could probably just do like 15% instead of 10 and achieve the same kind of result. You just would waste some salt. I don't know.
True.
So it depends on how you want to go about it, and maybe it's more efficient than that, and maybe it's like 20. I don't know. But really cool idea. I mean, I love thinking outside the box. That's awesome. All right.
We had this question from CS asked it too. Robert Pringle at the top. He wants to know when we're coming up with DIY fish food 102.
So I was shopping with my kid yesterday, and my wife at Bed Bath & Beyond. I saw a slap chop, and the first thing I thought of was, I bet you could slap chop this thing in your food until you got to the right size.
That's perfect.
Yeah, 2 seconds, breakfast to go, or however he says it. I don't know, man. And then I thought, you know what, the blender costs the same as this thing, actually. The
$30
really?
blender. See, there you go.
So I let it stay there. I think it's going to be pretty soon, man. There's a couple of things happening in the background for this one, so I don't know, man. I bet you within the month there'll be something on this. I'm tying myself down to this.
Yes.
But yeah, so what I'd like to give is 2 recipes. One that is just for your fish and one for an advanced tank. So like, for instance, on the XXL 750, just got fish in it. So I don't need all those coral foods and stuff in there. And all that's going to do is cause me problems.
Right.
It's going to grow algae and whatnot in the tank. Got so many tanks in there, the algae probably won't be an issue. But at the same time, man, I just don't need all those. Those are just undesirable nutrients at that point.
Yeah.
However, when the tank is like this one, adding all of the reef chili and all the things into the food, and you know, the cyclopods, and you know, blending up various foods and clams and stuff into it, will have a huge benefit for the organisms that are in there that rely on those types of things. So there'll probably be 2 different ones, and I mean, I say a month, but you gotta give me like a month and a half.
You see us up here on our cooking show again?
Yeah, that was super fun. That was maybe my favorite
That's what
episode
people
of all
were
time.
looking for.
Chop chop. There was another one. What do you guys think about Nopox in there? So Nopox, if you're watching earlier, we're talking about carbon dosing, and carbon dosing just isn't my favorite thing. The Nopox is a carbon dose, and if you actually look at the MSDS, it like literally says on there, I think it's a mix of alcohol and vinegar.
Yeah.
However, like you could say, oh, well, I should just go buy some alcohol and vinegar. Maybe you should. I can't tell you the safety of doing that or not doing it. I'm sure there's really acceptable sources of that. In this case, the cool thing about it is it's whatever ratio they're using, and the dosing instructions on the side of it has been used by tens of thousands of reefers successfully. So there's some benefit in, you know, using it in the way that everybody else uses it, and the scale of success that comes from it. Otherwise, there's people that use dose vodka and vinegar and all those kinds of things on their own, and I'd go listen, you know, research those threads and try to figure out what, you know, seems to work for the most of those people.
Yeah, those were the trailblazers back when they started to use it. The vinegar bottle and the bottle of alcohol doesn't
People
tell you
rice and stuff.
It doesn't tell you, like, for reef tank purposes, use this, you know? So all those trailblazers from back when who figured it out, there are doses. I used to dose it myself when I was interested in, like, lowering my nitrates on one of my tanks. And I went to the threads, and there's very specific instructions on there for how much worked for their tank or how much to, like, start as a dose. So
yeah, so the only part is, man, it's for me, I can only speak for myself, is when I was a reefer and I got 4,000 posts, you know, on my original, like, Reef Central account. I think it is that many anyway, a lot. And I'm just asking, it's just really super hard to figure out who is this I'm supposed to listen to.
Yeah.
You know, which one of these guys, like, has it really figured out?
Yeah.
You know? And so, and then sometimes there's like a thread on, like, carbon dosing or Nopox use, but it's like 800 pages deep, man. So, like, where's the accumulation of the experiences? Like, like let's update page 1. Use 1 milliliter per gallon or whatever it is, and I wish that would happen. So, like for some people, like, definitely saving some money on just using a bottle of vinegar, even though it doesn't say reefing directions on it.
Yeah.
But in relation just to using it, is it good or bad? It definitely produces results.
It does.
Like it will definitely reduce the nitrate and phosphate in your tank, probably to 0 or near 0 in most cases. The exact mechanism is theorized and largely believed, but nobody really knows exactly how it works. I can tell you that it's supposedly based on a skimmer pulling out the bacteria that is consuming it, but I've seen it work in systems that don't have skimmers, so I kind of think that there might be more to this than people actually think. And I don't know. So this one, there's a lot of unknowns, and like we said, with Worldwide, man, those guys are the nerdiest of the nerdiest of the nerdiest, self-proclaimed nerdiest, and they say, I don't dose it. So I don't know, man. If you're really super engaged and you want next level, I think that is probably the safest way to do a carbon dose, to make sure that you're doing what everybody else does. You're using a safe material. And so go ahead. It will absolutely work for you. It's just a little confusing. All right, hey, it's 4 o'clock, man. I've never had a hard time.
They were giving you a countdown in the comments.
Oh, really? All right, it's 4 o'clock. I never have an actual hard stop where I actually have to go do something. In this case, I do. So I appreciate guys all asking, and
Yeah, looking forward to this week. We're going to be talking salt, I think, all week, Wednesday and Friday.
And be nice to us, please. I beg you. I beg you. Like, all we're doing is add information into the universe, and I know everybody loves our salts near and dear to our heart. But let's all of them have something to do really awesome, and all of them have something they don't do super spectacular. Let's get that information out of the universe so that we can all make intelligent decisions on what we do, because it is not just the best. It doesn't exist. Some do great things in some areas, and some do great things in other areas. And just pick one wherever works for you.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right, we'll see you.
All right, Sice. See you later.